welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to teach you how to master fishing. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting into it, these tips are going to help you catch more fish and bigger fish. It's going to teach you what you need to look for and what you need to do to get in the right place at the right time to hook up and get your line tight to a really nice trophy fish. So stay tuned. Hope you enjoy the video.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the next video. I was going to do a little bit of talking before I get into the fishing. So I'm under this palm tree at the fishing spot. Now what I want to talk about is attention to detail. If you want to become a master fisherman, you've clicked on this video, you got to pay attention to the details. It's all in observation. So I'm going to show you in a lot of fishing today, I did a lot of observation. You got to look for signs of life. Number one, if you see little fish darting around the water, if you see turtles, I saw tons of turtles today. If you see fish in the water, that's a good sign. If the water looks briny and dark and has a ton of tannins and you don't see much activity, it's probably a dead pond. It doesn't have anything in it. Same with lakes. Lakes are really big. There's probably fish in them, but there are certain areas that don't have as much going on. You gotta observe if there are signs of life in general to start you off. Next, you gotta look up the weather. You can either do this on your phone, or you can just go outside, peep your head out the door, and be like, hey, it's really hot today. It's really hot where I am. I'm in South Georgia. The heat index right now is 101 degrees. It is hot. The fish are gonna wanna be in shade. They're gonna wanna be in deep water. They're not gonna be up in their really shallow water looking for tiny little bait fish because their bait fish are not there. The water is really warm. They're gonna want shelter. If it's really cold, they're probably going to be up more shallow. Where it's really warm, if it's a sunny day. If it's a lot of cloud cover, they're gonna be back deep because the water might stay a little warmer in the deep than it will be in the shallower regions of the body of water you're fishing. You also gotta look for time of year. This isn't so much something you look for, but it's just one of those things you got to be taking into account. Like I said earlier, in winter, they might be a little bit deeper or shallow depending on the weather pattern. In summer, they might be pushed up shallow in the early morning and in the late evening because it's cooler and all the bait fish are there. The shallow region's a really good area to look for bait fish for fish, so that's where they're gonna be. In spring, they might be searching the whole lake. They might be doing just rounds around everywhere. It's a really good time to use top water because the temperatures allow for the fish to go wherever they want. And in fall, the same thing might be happening. Now it depends on what you're going for, because here in South Georgia we have tarpon, we have redfish, and they in the fall are pushing up more on the shoreline because they're migrating. You got to look for migration if your fish is a fish that is not going to be in certain areas in certain times of the year. This might only happen in saltwater. There are very few freshwater fish that will be 1,000 miles away from where they were 6 months ago. So you got to take into account the different details that are going to be required for the type of fishing you want to do. That's the first step of becoming a good fisherman. You got to take into account the details. These details are what set me apart, and they are what will set you apart. Today, I saw lots of bluegill. I saw lots of bass. There are tons of turtles in here. I started fishing a lure that I had decent confidence in. When I started, I had on, I think, a worm. It was a U-tail worm that I got from my neighbor 15 years ago. I'm not kidding. And I fished with it a little bit. I had a big fish bite. That was great. I was thinking, okay, this is gonna be the lure for today. But the little fish, they saw it and they passed it up. They didn't want anything to do with it. So I said, little fish aren't biting. I'm noticing this. The water is luckily clear. I saw them look at it. I saw them go up and size it up and saw them swim away. So the U-tail worm was out. I switched to a bigger presentation. It looks like a frog. We're in South Georgia here, where I am personally. There's a lot of tree frogs. There's a lot of little bullfrogs. They're jumping in the water a lot. These fish are used to frogs. It's one of their sources of food. You got to be looking for sources of food as well. So this frog, I threw it in. It looks just like a frog. It hit the bottom of the water, instantly got picked up by a bass. Did not have any time to move it. The line started moving. I had a fish. But after that, nothing. I didn't have a single bite after that because the lure was too big. The small fish, again, were not biting it. So I put on a smaller frog-ish, crawfish looking thing. We have little fiddler crabs around here. I'm on an island, so we have quite a few crabs that will crawl all over the place. I thought to myself, hey, that might be a source of food for these fish. So I threw it on. The lure did not have the presentation I was looking for. It was more of a swimming lure where I'm fishing a Ned rig. It didn't work. It wasn't exactly compatible. It was scaring a lot of the fish. So what I did is I took a fatter Cinco worm. I cut it in half to a size that I thought the smaller fish are gonna go for. And that's what I'm fishing now. And that's what you're gonna see me fishing for the rest of this video. Because I think the smaller fish are gonna go for it. I think the bigger fish are gonna go for it. Through what I've observed, I think this is the lure that is gonna catch the most fish because I've been observing. I've been watching. I've been saying, hey, this worked, this didn't. This is what we need to go for. You gotta be thinking about sources of food for these fish because you can't just be looking for the fish. All of the things I talked about earlier, season, weather, temperature, region of water. You got to be thinking about the bait too. The bait might not be in that shallow water. It might be deeper. So you're going to say to yourself, the big fish are deeper because they're going to be where the bait is. You're going to say, hey, maybe I'm also in South Georgia. Maybe there are a lot of tree frogs that are jumping in from the bank. Maybe it would be a good idea to have a frog-looking lure and fish it closer to the bank. Maybe you're in Canada. Maybe you have smallmouth bass that are feeding on little minnows. You might want to have a smaller, more realistic, flashy presentation. This was true when I lived in Tennessee. They did not want to eat big lures. They wanted small, realistic looking lures. Maybe you live in Mexico or a region where you can get away at all times of year with fishing a really big lure that in other parts of the world wouldn't make sense. But where you are, your fish are aggressive and they don't have the seasonal needs depending on where you are in Mexico. So you might have a completely different lure presentation at different types of years just based on your environment. You got to be thinking about your environment. You got to be thinking about where you are. This is the things you got to do if you want to set yourself apart as a fisherman and start catching more fish. All right, with that said, let's go catch some fish. So, I got some packages. Let's open them. And I can talk while I'm opening these. So, these are Euro Tackle. I don't have any sponsors yet. So Euro Tackle, if you want to sponsor me, I'll be open to it. Very hard to open. Anyway, so these are very small little finesse lures. They're not that expensive. I would recommend getting some. But here they are. Little tungsten jig heads and some little fat assassins. And things are going flying in the wind. These are very, very, very good for just any kind of fishing. You can fish saltwater, freshwater, anything. They're really good. They're tiny and they have a lot of action. And that makes them really good for pressured fish. So you're gonna catch a lot more fish where other people aren't. So the other one's just more jig heads. It's different sizes. That's one thing I recommend, is just doing lots of different techniques. I said this earlier, but just try different things. Things work differently in different areas. Here in South Georgia, fishing's a lot different than it is in North Georgia. It's a lot different than it is in Idaho. It's different than it is in Europe. I've caught fish in 9 states. Each state was a little different in how the fish bit and how I caught things. So I got this size and I got a little bit bigger size. This is a 1/32 and 1/16 ounce lure. Very good for just all applications of fishing. Don't be thinking, oh, I'm only gonna catch a fish this big. I've caught 4-pound bass on these little lures, which is bigger than most people's PB. So, you can catch big fish on small lures. It's good for pressured fish. Elephants eat peanuts. I've said this a million times. It's true. It works. Try different things, try different colors. I have 4 different colors of these. Just go out, try things, see what works, which is gonna get into my next tip. All right, one more last thing I wanted to talk about is cover lots of water. There's quite a bit of water just in this pond. Just walk around the rim, but this is just one pond. There's ponds down that way that I love catching fish in. There's ponds that way I love catching fish in. There's just lots of ponds, and the only way to figure out which ones hold fish and which ones don't is to get your rod, to make casts, and to just find fish. The only way you're gonna know if there are fish there is if you can catch them. So I've been here for 2 years. I know the spots because I know where I've caught fish in the past. That's my last bit of advice. All right, guys, I caught this massive copper nose, which is kind of related to the bluegills. Oh God, no, he's out of here. Well, anyway, when I said to eat peanuts, he didn't want anything to do with us. Well, when I said elephants eat peanuts, guys, I meant it. That was a big, big fish. And I used a really small lure. It's tiny little bee vibe. I got him in my pocket, if I could ever find it. But guys, I wasn't lying to you when I said elephants eat peanuts. I know none of y'all have seen a bluegill that big in your life, which is technically a copper nose, so another species for the video, but caught it on this little bee vibe, Euro Tackle Micro Finesse. Wonderful company, check it out. Well, it's safe to say fishing with one hand wasn't so easy. I'll have to invest in a tripod or a GoPro and get some more professional fishing videos for y'all. So for now, I'll either have to have a friend film or just get a tripod. So in the next few days, I'll have some better videos. But until then, the lesson was start small. Start with a bait fish. They'll tell you everything you need to know. Bait fish, just catch a lot of them, have fun with them, and if you want to, use them to catch the big fish. Small is your ticket to big. That's all I gotta say. See you in the next video.